Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ana. I'm one of the founders here at Rise. I am so excited for this next conversation. I'm joined by an incredible person. She's a lawyer, an entrepreneur of a travel company, My Golden Balloon, an activist, the breakout star of the hit Netflix series Indian Matchmaking, and now an upcoming author of a book titled Unlikable and Other Lies That Bring Women Down. This in no way sums her up. She's really charting her own path to success and happiness in career and in her life. And it is so incredibly inspiring. I'm thrilled to welcome Aparna Shewakramani. Aparna, thank you so much for joining us here today, and welcome to the Rise community.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that sweet introduction. It made me a little overwhelmed. I'm like, am I doing all of that? And I was like, yeah, wait, I am.
You absolutely are, and making waves, and we're so excited to have you here. To get us started, I think this year has been transformative for a lot of us in a lot of different ways. But for you, you've had a really big change, becoming an international success overnight and coming into the public limelight. What has that journey been like for you? Yeah, love to hear about that.
Wish there was a guidebook for it. So it's been a journey with lots of detours and twists and turns. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. It feels now, 15, 16 months later, like I'm understanding that this is the tempo. I'm never going to fully grasp it because there is, like we said, no chart for this, no guidebook, no instruction manual, but it's becoming a new sort of norm to not know what's coming next. And I'm enjoying it.
Cool, amazing. Something that I think what really inspires me about you is I think a lot about this. I think how we tell our stories really play such a big part in us moving forward. How we tell our own stories to ourselves and how we share the story with other people. I want to hear from you. How you kind of stay true to your own self and kind of guide through that process and tell your story. And has that sort of changed with the show coming out and you being a public figure?
Yeah, so this whole idea of narrative building and the way that we do it really came to me where I started focusing on it and realizing with words and the language that I could speak to myself in. I did a Buddhist meditation camp called Vipassana. It's this 10-day meditation experience, I guess, where you go to a ranch in Texas or wherever. There's many of them around the world, and you turn in your phone, your computer. No reading, no writing, no music, no eye contact with any other person for 10 days, no speaking. And you learn how to meditate, and you do it from 4:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day for 10 days. And it's interesting because you are not speaking to the people in the room with you. And yet I found myself so naturally making up stories for all of them. And it hit me along the way that we're actually always making up stories about ourselves too. And we don't need words for that. We don't need, actually even events outside of us for that. We do it. And some of us do it more than others, and some of it do it in a way that harms ourselves. And so I became very cognizant then and through that experience to no longer also worry so much about the story that people tell about me and worry more about my own story. And not even worry, but stay aware of my own story. And so I think that experience was 6 years prior to Indian Matchmaking. I always joke that I'm glad I was the age I was. I'm one of the oldest people on unscripted dating show. I was 34 when I taped it. A lot of the women I meet now that have been on reality TV go on these experiences when they're in their 20s. And I just feel like I had the tools. I had resources within me, outside of me, to deal with this sudden vilification and this trolling and the death threats and all the things that are really ugly that come after these experiences. I don't think I did it well, and I'm not saying I did better than anyone else, but I knew that I was equipped. And that has carried me. That understanding and knowing and belief that I was equipped carried me. And I think this is for all of us. I don't think you don't need to be vilified in 150 countries. You can literally do it in your workplace. You can do it on your WhatsApp groups at the dinner table. It's about understanding your own narrative, the way you want to tell it. The lies we sometimes tell ourselves when we build narratives, especially what other people think of us or what's happening around us or those external components. I just think that if we let go of the fact that we don't actually know, and that in the end, people don't really care about you, like, how liberating is that? It felt like they cared when the show first came out, and then I realized whoever wrote those ugly things or even those nice things, they didn't really care. They didn't think about me 3 seconds after they stopped saying it or writing it or commenting on a social media post. And so it was me who was left with it. I could sit with those things or I could move past them. And yeah, the whole thing is quite empowering when you start believing that, you know, nobody really cares about you and you'll be fine if you just stick to your own truth and your own values and align your life with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you were so intentional about taking that time for yourself, whether it kind of happened to be, but that experience really informed and kind of you took that moment within yourself to recognize who you are, what your story is, and how to stay true to that. I'm sure through this process and journey, there have been moments. I think a lot of times when we look at confident women, and I mean, I think you portray that a lot, and you've kind of come out of this with a very strong sense of self. What were those kind of moments that were very vulnerable for you, and what was the self-talk that you told yourself to kind of get yourself out of it and kind of get back realigned with your truth?
You know, it's interesting, but the thing I was most afraid of was that I would forever have to justify and defend myself against a portrayal that I did not identify with. And at a certain point, I went through all the stages of grief over that, one day, 10 years from now, I could walk into a dinner party and someone will whisper, "Ooh, I hated her on that show." And it was really hard for me. I really had to grapple with that because it almost felt like I now had a barrier that I didn't even choose, which then I realized many of us do in so many ways, from the way that we look or our educational backgrounds or the way we carry ourselves into a room. Maybe we're all coming in, with those things that allow people to judge us. And so I don't know, it was definitely a process though, because there's no way my own story will ever be bigger than that story, and that story isn't a person I identify with. And so yeah, I still think it's a process. I don't think I'm at the end of it. And I do still meet people who are like, "Oh, you were horrible. You are horrible because of what we saw." And I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. I thought we were all over this. Like, are we not all over this? Because I'm over it. Are we not over it?"
Yeah.
And we may never, as a people, be over it. So I think that'll be an interesting journey. I think it will always evolve the way that I handle it. It'll depend on the day. Some days I really just snap at people. Like, there was a woman at the airport once that was just like telling me who I was. And I literally looked at her and I was like, "You're pretty illiterate and you don't understand reality TV. I really can't have this conversation with you." That was mean. I That was not nice. But I really just wasn't in the mood. I was irritated. Our flight had been delayed. She caught me at the wrong time. It was really hot in there. It was like, it was like the heat was on and it shouldn't have been. And I was just like, "I don't want to talk to you. You're a
Yeah.
terrible person. Goodbye." And she kept coming after me and having this conversation with me. And I was just so surprised that she was so persistent. But
Yeah.
you can catch me on a bad day and I'm not going to be nice to you. So I don't want to make it sound like we're all rainbows and butterflies and Zen Buddhist talk. On my best day, I would love to be. On my normal days, I'm not. And on my worst days, goodness gracious, help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to allow yourself to kind of also be and just get over it and move on too. Yeah, I think something that you kind of touched upon that I think is really interesting is the sense of reality TV and sensationalism and good TV or kind of entertainment and real life. I think you're a person, you're a human being, you're dynamic, you do a lot of things. And I think it's interesting that the portrayal of kind of an archetype of a person is what carries through and someone comes to you in real life and says, "You're this person, but you're not. You're so much more.
But we all
How
are, right? We're
Yeah,
all so much more than the version that someone sees of us, whether it's on television or in the workplace. Like, let's say a colleague of yours thinks you're a certain way because you're that way in the workplace.
yeah,
A lot of us have coping mechanisms that we carry with us into the workplace, and that makes us a version of ourselves that maybe we don't actually identify with as a whole. We see ourselves as daughters, mothers, wives, friends, community members, and the person at work only sees you as the person at work and then believes that is your whole person. I think that there's a bigger story here about how we are all three dimensional. And that when we see one version of a person, even if we see them every day in that version, that's not who they are. And these
yeah,
perceptions are kind of what I touch upon in my book, She's Unlikable. It's all these lies that bring women down. That in the workplace, if she's driven and ambitious, then that means she doesn't deserve love in her personal life. Well, that's just not true. Like we're all bigger than that. We're all more complex than that.
yeah, absolutely. Kind of going back to the part about like how to tell your story, I think these kind of narratives that are kind of about either South Asian women or women, I think sometimes do hold us back. And it's kind of hard, especially with social media and even, having a personal presence and a personal brand.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, what are some ways that you um, kind of think about those things? Or I'm sure there are, so like we talked about, people's perception of who Aparna is
Mhm.
on social media or on a show versus who Aparna is now. How do you kind of balance that act?
I'm not sure you ever do. That's that part where you have to remind yourself and check in. Am I doing something or saying something that's aligned with me and who I believe I am and what's aligned with my values and my beliefs, my drives, my passion? And then speak from that place or act from that place, live from that place, and then worry less about perceptions of what that is, because then at least at the end of the day, you're being true to yourself. I think what was really empowering about this show, it was a cast full of South Asians. And most of the time when we've seen South Asians in the media, they've either played the convenience store person or the nerdy girl or
Yeah,
the demure submissive Asian archetype. And for once there was a whole cast. So within the cast, they had to give us every archetype. I
yeah,
mean, arguably had to give us every archetype instead of just being ourselves. But
yeah,
it's interesting because it was empowering. I mean, I do think that there was many women that finally saw a driven South Asian woman who said, like, hey, I believe I deserve this kind of love and I want it and I'm not going to settle. And that's never been shown before. It kind of started also that same summer with Never Have I Ever. That
mhm,
18-year-old character saying, like, hey, I want to be sexually active with this good looking man, like boy in her school. And we're slowly getting there in general. But there
yeah,
was many, many, many years where we were only certain archetypes, and there was almost like a freedom and a liberation in the fact that we can be all of them. And I think that's that same overarching theme I talk about how we South Asian women, women of color, anyone really is bigger than the archetypes that we've been given throughout probably the past 30 to 40 years.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you're incredibly resilient. I think there's like this sense of strong um, confidence in you, and you're unapologetic about it. And I think that's amazing. But is this something that has been instinctive to you from the get-go, or has this something that you've kind of developed over time? Are there like pivotal moments that were kind of made you feel like kind of coming into your own power, if you will?
Yeah. My book is a memoir, which is strange. I never thought I would write one in my 30s, but it's interesting because I had to evaluate my own life. Like, I think what the book She's Unlikable talks about is, or answers actually questions that I got. I got tens of thousands of questions from women all over the world saying, how did you become like this? And not in a bad way, but just like, how? Like, can we replicate it? Do we want to replicate it? Like, tell us more.
Yeah,
And it was an interesting question because it was so prevalent. It was so something I hadn't even thought about. Like, how did I become this way? And so the book is 11 lessons that I've learned in my life that have made me live my authentic life, whatever that looks like to me, which we will
mhm,
all have our own definitions. And I had to explore things like my immigration to this country as a 7 or 8 year old. What is that like to come into a new culture and to not fit in, to start code switching? It talks about the women in my family and the things that they've gone through, the generational understandings that we have almost innately because we're born into them, but then we develop them and evolve them and dig deeper into them. Talks about my autoimmune condition. I was diagnosed when I was 16 with Crohn's, and it's an interesting age as a young woman to be given a diagnosis, especially one of something that's not curable. And I think that there's all these moments for all of us. It might not be an autoimmune condition, or for me, I lost my home in Hurricane Harvey. One day, I woke up and all my possessions were gone. What is that like? How do you pick yourself up when you don't have shoes, a mattress, clothes? One day you just wake up and it's all gone. Your photographs, your mementos, what can be saved, what has to be thrown? How do you start over with possessions? And what do material things mean to us? Um, I think that these are things I explore in the book. These are things I kind of had to force myself to explore to write the book. And it was an interesting amalgamation, I guess, of who I am and how I became this way. And I do believe that resilience is built. I think one of my chapters is called Resilient Bodybuilder Muscle called Resilience. I think that's chapter 6 or something. But I believe it. I believe you can grow with it. You can strength train with it. Oftentimes, it's not by choice. I did not choose a hurricane. I did not choose a diagnosis. I did not choose to immigrate here when I was 7. But our life circumstances give us those opportunities.
Yeah,
And we should
absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I think you that's the thing. That's where you kind of build that. It's like a muscle, that confidence that I can get over this. I have the ability, and whatever your kind of is thrown your way, you figure it out, and then you start believing in yourself that I can figure it out. I've done this before, so
Yeah.
I can figure it out.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's incredible. I think am an extreme people pleaser, so I think that that's something that I have to kind of constantly remind myself of too, is to kind of have that ability to be like check in with myself and like know where I'm at and where my confidence and my power is as
Mhm.
well. Um, so the other piece I wanted to talk about was also your journey as an entrepreneur. You're launching my Golden Balloon, which is a travel company to help folks plan their itineraries, I believe.
No, I
Okay.
lead them on my dream itinerary. So
Oh,
you
lovely.
sign up and you come along with me. I am an avid traveler. I love it, but I also am very swayed by my early travel experiences as an adult. So I studied abroad 3 times, but my first time I ran around the world in this cruise ship. It's a program called Semester at Sea, and it was interesting because I got to see the world in one fell swoop. 10 countries in 100 days, circumnavigating the globe, and you see all the commonalities of human beings. Like, how special to go from India to Burma to Vietnam in 15 days, and then not only go there but have people teaching you about it intensively before you land there, about
Mhm.
their social struggles, about their politics, about their currency, but also about like why in Japan the birth rate is declining, why in South Africa they did the Truth and Reconciliation committees, like really pertinent things to those people. And then you dropped in the country and it's like, have fun, see you in 4 days. And I think that was a great experience because that's how I've always aimed to travel now. I want to learn. I want to be there. I don't want to, I mean, I love nice hotels, but I don't want to just be on my beautiful resort and not see the people or experience their culture, or see their trials and tribulations. I think that's what makes them people too, more than just, oh, they have pretty beaches or great food, but like, what are they struggling with? What are they overcoming? And so my Golden Balloon kind of takes you on these luxury adventures, because I still like my luxury, but with these opportunities to cook in a grandmother's house or float in the Dead Sea or have all of the amenities, taking you like private drivers and 5-star hotels, but taking you into, a street tour of the graffiti in that area. I wanted to make travel special for people. And I know that's so hard when you're planning it yourself because you are working full time usually and you're coordinating for the group, and one person always takes the brunt of it. So the whole concept is, why don't I take the brunt of it? You sign up, you buy your round trip ticket, I take care of everything. You land and I take care of everything. And so it's been a really cool experience, but also really challenging. And COVID started a month after our first trip. We had a whole year of trips planned. Most of them were sold out by January of 2020. We went on our first one in Feb of 2020 to Jordan, and then the world shut down. We had to cancel everything. And now we're trying again to revive it, and it's not going well. And I think sometimes we have to admit that in entrepreneurship, sometimes there's a moment in time for businesses and a need in the market, and sometimes there's not. And right now, it's a not. I was supposed to be in Morocco 3 weeks ago, leading a tour. I sold all 12 spots. Within 2 days, I had to refund everyone's money because news came from Morocco that the ICUs were full and the 8 p.m. curfew was in place and it wasn't safe. It's just not, even if you're vaccinated, it's not safe. And so, done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I love this company. I love it. But I've now had it for 3 years and barely been able to take off the ground. And that's not because of me. And I think sometimes for entrepreneurship, you have to say, like, this might not work. It might work. It might be a different time that it will work. And I'm okay with that. I'm working on so many other things that I am passionate about that I'm happy to say, let's put this on pause and revisit it over
Yeah.
and over again. Let's revisit
Yeah. There's that resilience again.
it.
um, yeah, that's awesome. Where did you get kind of the travel bug, or what was your kind of first trip that kind of that sparked the interest?
My because we moved only when I was 7, we lived in Dubai, and my mom just always believed the world was very small. So she would like take us to London every summer because Dubai gets too hot. So we would spend 4 months in London, and then we would travel from there. And I was very young, and I just always thought that was normal. Whatever you know as a child is normal. That you can fly 24 hours, and that's normal. Like I was doing that when I was 3 or 4. And so when we were growing up, it became a little harder to travel from the States, but I would still push to go on trips. And then my first opportunity was this cruise ship when I was like, oh, wow, the world is not only as small as my mom said, it's way smaller. You can see the whole thing in 100 days, like, and study at the same time. And so then I just spent every dime I had all through law school. And I studied abroad 2 more times after that. And I was just like, oh, everyone wants to go to Cancun for spring break. I want to go to Istanbul. And so I'd go to Istanbul. My senior year, I went to Greece for 10 days. Everyone else was going to like South Padre Island or something. I'm like, I don't want to go there. And so I think it was just an innate desire. It was always there. And then it got nurtured kind of through these studying experiences.
That's awesome. You mentioned your mom. She's a big influence in your life, and you guys are very close, and you have a really wonderful friendship.
Yeah.
How has that influenced you and who you are today?
Yeah. I have a very special relationship with my mom. And I think it's because I also had to live in nanny till I was 9. And what happened was I had 2 moms in that sense, right? 2 people raising me. And my mom was always more short-tempered. I don't think she was that great with kids, honestly. And so I had this loving nanny, and she was like a mom to me. And whenever my mom would get like irritated or tired or normal things that parents do, nothing like abnormal, but just like, hey, I've had a long day. I don't want to cook you dinner. Well, someone else already had. Or I don't want to read to you. Well, someone else already had. Or I want to do those things. Well, you can step in and do it. There was a flexibility when a village raises you that gives you this really positive experience because more people are there to love you. And so as I grew up and as my nanny left us when I was, I think, 8 or 9, and I was, alone with my mom, turns out a 9-year-old is pretty self-sufficient, or I was. My sister was 11, and it was always more of a friendship. We worked together as a team. There was a camaraderie. It was just the 3 of us, and we've always been close. I rely on them for support and advice. They do the same for me. It's quite equitable in many ways, and I think that's the power of it, that we don't see each other as anything but flawed human beings that love each other in a unit, and I think that's really special.
Yeah, that is really special. I mean, it's like an adult relationship, and you have kind of created a unique bond, and bring the best of both what you have. Um, are there other women in your life, or how have you built kind of a support system for yourself, or folks that you can go for advice, or to vent, or just to talk about anything?
I'm very blessed. I have very strong relationships with women. I always have my whole life. I've never been in a situation where I'm like, oh, women are catty, women don't support each other. And I think it's that actual belief and knowledge that I have that has made it true in a way. I've never had a poor experience with groups of women. And I think that's very rare. The more I talk to other women, I realize how rare that is. Um, that's just been my personality though. I've had good guy friends, but like they may think I'm their best friend, but I'm not theirs. Like I love my relationships with women. Sorry, my computer's doing something weird. Okay. I love the tribes that I build, and I build them very easily. So I've only been in New York, a few months, and I already have people I would consider sisters, people I can rely on. I'm quote unquote alone here. I have some family in New Jersey, but like there's so many things that like I'm hitting, obstacles with, and these women are stepping up, and I do the same for them. I think again, it's what I learned in my nuclear family. If I reflect on it, like about that equitable give and take, that reciprocity, I give it so easily, and I also receive it so easily, and I'm very blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome that you've built that. Um, you've gone through a lot of changes in this year and you've started this business, and with COVID, it's really affected, especially travel. There are a lot of women here today who are at that even crossroads of pursuing their passion or kind of questioning what they're doing and kind of figuring out how they can follow their path. What advice do you give them that they can follow in their own path?
So it takes time to do what I'm about to suggest, but I suggest it if you can do it. Network in the most unexpected ways, and don't
Mhm.
expect anything out of the networking. A lot of people tell me, oh, go on LinkedIn and find the people that are doing exactly what you're doing, and just like, send out a million DMs or messages and see who will have informational calls with you. And I say, no, start conversations with people who are interested in getting to know you, and who you're getting to know, and don't expect a certain outcome. So for instance, I wrote my first book like we talked about,
Mhm.
and turns out that there's other mediums of writing that I actually find a little more enjoyable, and I didn't even know about them. But a friend from college who I kind of actually barely knew in college, I wouldn't call her a friend. She called me a friend, but I wouldn't call her a friend. An acquaintance in college was like, let's have coffee. She kept pushing for it and kept pushing for it. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like so busy. And we had to meet up in Houston when I was there because she's in Houston. So I ended up going, and she's like, oh, I just got a new job with Crown Media. What's Crown Media? It's Hallmark. Like, oh, I love the Hallmark channel. And I launched into this diatribe of how I love Hallmark and how my mom watches it and I watch it. And, it's like this thing in my family. And she's like, well, I invited you to coffee today. I would love to submit you as one of our new writers. I think that we need diverse new voices. It's one of our missions. And I think you should write Hallmark movies. And I was like, interesting. So I went home that day. I outlined a whole movie and I sent it to her. And she was like, this is brilliant. And she set me up with a developer at Crown Media. And now we're working on 2 different movies with South Asian protagonists. I don't know if they'll ever get developed. 90% of the things that hit that desk never get developed, but we're
Yeah.
going through the process now. I love what I've created. I love what I've written. If you would have even told me 4 months ago, 5 months ago, I was going to write Hallmark movies, I would have said no. So I think my lesson through that is that one coffee, changed everything. Another first time author reached out to me, and she writes like rom-com kind of books. And I write nonfiction, obviously. So I was like, I don't know, this is a weird call to take, but we took it. And she was like, how's life after the show? I was telling her all these stories. She's like, this is hilarious. Write a pilot. And I was like, what do you mean a pilot? A TV show about it? She's like, yeah, write a TV show about your life. And so now I'm writing a pilot. This first time author of books that have nothing to do with my books gave me this idea that I had never considered, never would have thought of. And now I'm developing with a production studio. There are things that we think we want, and then there are things that surprise us when we open ourselves to being surprised. And so the 2 things I'm most passionate and excited about, I could not have even imagined 4 months ago. So I would say that to people: allow yourself to reach out to and be reached out to by surprising people, and get ready for the surprises they present.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and be kind of open to the opportunities, and you never know where it would fall. Um, what would you say about kind of then taking the leap and actually going for it? Like being open to opportunities is one thing, kind of having those conversations. But if you're kind of like, am I ready? Am I not? Like, what are some things that someone can do or you've done to just kind of go for it?
A lot of people ask me for counsel on this. Actually, it's interesting. There's a lot of copies nowadays where people are like, how do I do it? And I have to say, there's a logistical component to it. To do what I'm doing, I had the savings to do it. And I don't like when people are like, it's so easy, you just jump off the bridge and take the leap. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have 12 months of your savings, like of your life, like
Yeah.
needs, saved up in a liquid account, ready to go and be used? You might never use it. You might quickly land on your feet. You might not, but give yourself the time. It took me about 9 months to even get that idea for the Hallmark movie, which I would say is the direction I'm going in, or the pilot. It took me 11 months to get there, and 11 months of dedicating myself to this, to staying open. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a few weeks off, go on a vacation, and then quickly figure out my next move." And I'm like, "That if you need to, yes, do that. If you can, if you can, dedicate yourself to this process." And it feels like, and I still say to my family and my friends today, I'm like, "Oh, I don't work. I'm always not working." And they're like, "What you're doing right now is work. Work looks differently when you're in the explorative phase, the development stage. It doesn't look the way it looked in corporate America for 10 years when I was a lawyer. And it doesn't mean you're not working. Like it is work. And so if you can give yourself time, do it. If you can't, I totally understand, but maybe start building towards that point, because it does take openness of time and energy to kind of get these calls. I would have never been able to say yes to that coffee or yes to that phone call with that Canadian author if I didn't have the time to do it, or the interest, or the flexibility in my schedule. And so that would be my advice. I'm not sure it's possible for everyone, but that's what's changed my whole trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think at Rise, I think I resonate with this greatly, and I think a lot of people do. I think more and more people are doing many things and identifying with many things. It's not just about your day job. Like, you were a lawyer, but you were extremely passionate about travel, and this is kind of spurred into this project and this company that you're building. And the
Well, I
book
built the
is about.
company while working full time. I
Oh,
built the
okay.
company in 2018 or 19 from my desk. I would shut my door every day, tell my admin I had a meeting every day at 9 a.m., and sit there for an hour and build the social media page, and get on phone calls with my then partner in London, and I would do it all from my office. There were so many ways we waste time back in when we were in offices all the time anyway, that were like, having coffee with your going down to Starbucks with your peer. Instead, I would shut my door and build the business. So I built the business from my office as a full time lawyer for an hour and 10 minutes a day. I gave it 50, like 70 minutes a day, and I was like, this is it. And that gave me less time to, mess around with my coworkers. But I was like, I don't even like them. So what difference does it make? Like, if I'm honest, I don't even really like these people. So, like, they're my fake work friends. But, like, once it's weird about corporate America. You get very attached to these people you work with because you have these similar experiences. And then you leave the place and you realize you never really liked any of them anyway. And you're more than happy to never see them again. That's my experience anyway. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, I think it is like sometimes your work is your passion and it's your whole life, but it doesn't have to be,
right.
and not feeling kind of guilty about it. And I think from you, I can sense that you're also very intentional about giving yourself the time to explore different projects and kind of seeing where they go before being like, I'm committing to this, or I'm not doing enough, or I'm doing too much of this, just kind of going with the flow a little bit
I
as
think
well.
it's the new belief I have. It's very new that we are in fact limitless, and that we put the limitations on ourselves. But like, everyone's like, how are you going to write romantic Hallmark movies and your own comedy pilot and books? And I'm
Yeah.
like, why not? I'm limitless. I can write whatever I want, and I can stop writing. I can start something else. My travel company can take off. Honestly, 3 months from now, I'm probably going to be doing a project I haven't even thought of or heard of today. And when we start believing and living in that element, it suddenly becomes way bigger and way more exciting. And for so many years, for 10 years, I lived in a place where I was so closed in. And then I look back on it now, I'm like, I did that. I closed myself in. I put myself in that office with those coworkers I didn't like, with that job I hated, with those toxic bosses. I did it. And I limited myself. And so this new phase is scary and uncertain, but it's also freeing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I think what kind of, I love that you're kind of writing a Hallmark movie. I think that's so super cool. I think it's fantastic. Kind of sitting at home, I think a lot of us are still working from home and stuff. What is I mean, I know you're in New York City, but
Mm.
what are you inspired by these days? What's kind of sparking those interests to write in different formats and different storylines?
I don't actually write that much. So the movie outlines, because I
Yeah.
just outline them first before I commit to writing the script. You outline them fully. All 9 acts. All Hallmark movies are 9 acts, by the way. The same things happen if you know the acts. The almost kiss is in 6. The biggest fight is in 7. The moment of reckoning is in 8, and 9 is the kiss, and the happy ending. You too can write a Hallmark movie. But yeah, it took me 2 days. The book took me 18 days. So it's like people think I'm like toiling away writing all the time, but really I'm living my life and waiting for inspiration and moments and opportunities and staying open to them most of the time. And I'm also doing the things I could never do for those 10 years. Like I just went home for Diwali for the week. I did some medical procedures and spent time with family. And then I said goodbye to them this morning at 5 a.m., got on a plane to New York. And they're like, "Oh, when are you coming back again?" I was like, "Oh, in 14 days. Bye." But imagine, I like come back for Thanksgiving. Like, I just went to Portugal for a week. I went to Kenya for 2 weeks this summer. I got too hot here in New York, so I quit my sublet and went to Paris for a month. I'm also giving myself treats, and I call them treats, but really they're also just living life. And I didn't get to do that for so long. And so I think there's also these moments of opportunity to take care of ourselves, to give ourselves moments that are special. I may never get this opportunity again. I will likely never spend a month in Paris again. I will go back many times. I will love it. I will take hopefully my future children there and my mom back and all that stuff, but it will never be that. And I
Yeah.
think there's a moment of gratitude for all the things that are possible in this time of flux. That sure, I'm lacking all kinds of stability, but I'm also gaining all kinds of experiential moments that are just so special. And I do that most of the time. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to write the next thing or find the next project. Um, that's not where I'm at right now. And honestly, when you're not like that, that's when it all finds you anyway. You don't have to find it; it will
That's
find
true.
you.
That's true. Yeah, I love that kind of that spontaneity and
Mhm.
being the openness kind of brings forth experiences, opportunities, and also that joy and happiness that you might not have identified. I think we sometimes like over plan and over prepare, but
Yeah.
it is
And
those
we look
kind of
and we
little,
look and we search and we search, and it's like, well, what if it just comes to you? And
yeah,
in those moments, it will come to you. I had a conversation with a friend the other day. We ended up having a 6 hour dinner, and it's probably going to be my second book. And I was like, oh, and I've been looking for my second book for like, oh, my agent and I have been talking about it for like a month. We've had brainstorming calls, we have emails going back and forth. Not only did I come up with the book, I came up with the title. And I was
yeah,
like, wait, the book has a title. It's got a whole outline. And it happened because I went to dinner with a random person, like not that random, a friend, but like, you know what I mean? Like 6 hours later, I'm like, I have my book. But if
yeah,
I didn't have time for a 6 hour dinner, if I was rushing home to go to bed so that I could wake up to go to my office, and like, I would have never had that moment of clarity where I was like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to explore. This is for me.
yeah.
That's what I'm
Or,
looking at.
or
That's for me. Yeah.
yeah, or like sitting in front of a screen with like a blank template saying, I have to write a book today, right? Like I
The
think
worst feeling. There
it
were some days when I was writing that book where the reason I wrote the book so fast is because I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. It was so overwhelming that my strategy for things that are overwhelming is plow through them. And so I plowed through that book. My agent was like, "Did you just write that book in 3 weeks?" I'm like, "I did." It was frightening because every day I would sit down with just like this anxiety that like I have to write the book today.
yeah.
That's not my style, but it was a timely book, obviously, and so I think there are many logistics that always come into play that don't always make it, perfect for you, but you still have to do it. I'm also very realistic about that. But yeah, I'm excited about this potential second book, and it might never be my second book. Today, I think it is, but I'm also staying open, and I think that fluidity is so important.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think that's awesome, to be fluid and to kind of go with the flow. I'm really excited about your book. So speaking about the book, I believe it's coming out next February. Um, what are you hoping people walk away after reading it?
Hmm. I mean, it's interesting because you write this in memoir and it's your story, but you're hoping that it resonates with people. And I think the way that I formatted it with these rules, um, of living my life, I hope that it helps people and they use me as an anecdote or an idea of how to do it for themselves, how to body build their resilience, how to take lessons from the women in their family that came before them, how to stand up for themselves. I I want myself to just be one example of hopefully many in their lives that they can turn to when they're looking for that inspiration or that source of strength to do something similar in their own bubble and sphere. It doesn't again have to be on a worldwide stage. I don't think many of us will ever live on one. I may never live on one again. Who knows if I want to? And I still think that it's pertinent, and I still think that maybe this is an extreme story, that maybe most people will never lose all their possessions one morning. at 6 a.m. in a hurricane. But what is loss, and how do you deal with it? And what is loss of physical items, or loss of a person, or loss of an idea or belief that you've held for so long? I think these are universal themes, and hopefully the people that read it can resonate with those themes and apply it to their own lives.
Yeah. I think what you kind of mentioned too is like you recognize that you have a story to tell. I think so many of us like feel like we don't. But I think hearing and stories and hearing that representation and kind of finding being vulnerable and showcasing yourself, I think that's where we kind of find that alignment. We're like, oh, I had that little mini aha moment that I felt was just my own and didn't matter. But I think so many people else are having it, and this is how they're talking about it. This is
Yeah.
how they're thinking about it. And I think that's what kind of brings us all together. And I think that's what's like really awesome to hear and learn from others as
Yeah.
well.
As someone just approached me about writing a story for, I think, the Financial Times, and it's about this great resignation that we're all talking about. And I was like, well, my viewpoint is it's the great redirection, and it's for all of us. And I think that's kind of
Mhm.
what this book touches upon, that like I redirected my whole life. And it even, I added a chapter right before we were finalizing it about this move to New York and why I left my life and my friends and my family and my job and everything I ever knew to go to a city that I've never lived in, that honestly I didn't have that many close friends in when I got here. And to just say, like, I'm going to take this chance. And I think this is a moment for so many of us where we're doing this great redirection. And what are the chances we're going to take? And how do we see other women around us do that? And what can we learn from them? So many lessons we can actually learn from others without having to go through it painstakingly ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's real strength in that, in this community that we're building, in the collaborations and the dialogues that we have with each other. I think it kind of cuts down, hopefully, on some of the, like I said, the painstaking moments where we could have bumbled through it ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we can learn from others and kind of have at least in that moment, oh, someone else in a similar situation did something, then
Mm,
it obviously helps us a lot.
yes.
So we're almost at time to kind of wrap up the conversation. You shared a little bit about where you've been in the last couple of weeks or months, but what's your next big adventure and where are you most excited about?
I actually have no adventure planned, and it's kind of stressing me. I am going to be in New York through the end of the year with a couple of trips to Houston for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then I have to decide what my new year looks like. January, I kind of can come back to New York. I have a sublet here, so I can choose to come back. Or I'm thinking I might spend a few weeks in London. I haven't spent some time there, obviously, because of COVID. They just opened up again. Maybe go to Namibia. Um, my book comes out February 8th. So by the 1st of Feb, I need to be back in New York and figuring out book launch stuff. We'll have more of an idea of that in the coming weeks. I want to do some sort of book tour to celebrate this. Book tours are kind of, I don't know, passe nowadays. Nobody does them, but I kind of have this idea that I want to connect with people in different cities around the US and say hello to people who've supported me for the past year or two. So I might be doing my own little launches, parties, fun things all through February just to celebrate this moment. I'll never have my first book again. I'll have many books after this, I'm sure, but never
Absolutely.
my first one again. And so I kind of want to give myself that moment of celebration. And I don't know, hopefully that's a lesson to some people out who are listening too. Like, let's give ourselves moments of celebration. Let's carve those out and make them intentional and schedule them in.
I absolutely love that. And I love that you're celebrating. I love that you're going on a book tour because I think, I mean, as a South Asian American, I think it is so exciting to see another book about with a South Asian American woman on the cover, talking about just like real experiences. I think it's really inspiring. So
Thank you.
I'm excited that you're doing a book tour, whether it's cool in or not. I'm excited that you're doing it.
Yeah, I'm telling you more
I
like
will be
a book
there.
meet and greet, a book like Let's Celebrate. Like, people are like, "Oh, can I throw you an event? Can we have a party?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." Like, let's do those things. So I am thinking LA, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, Austin, New York, maybe Boston, Miami. We'll see. I don't know yet, but I figure that's where most of February will go, and that's a lot to look forward to. So I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we end our little chat, where can we find your book once it is launched?
It's already on pre-order, and actually for
Okay.
first-time authors, it's really important that you guys pre-order, not just my book, but any first-time author that you want to support or love. Pre-orders for first-time authors determine how many books go to print, determine what their budgets are, determine all kinds of things behind the scenes, which I had no idea about. Now I pre-order every book from every author. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I had no idea about pre-orders.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm on bookshop.org if you want to celebrate independent bookstores, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. She's Unlikable is pretty much available most of your major sources. So yeah, check it out. If it rings true to you, pre-order it. And always just remember pre-order from all your favorite first-time authors.
That is a good, I mean, you're learning so much about other industries and we're learning about that too. I think that that's incredible. We will definitely do that.
For
Well,
sure.
thank you so much for your time today, your
Thank you.
energy and the positivity you brought. And we've had some really important little nuggets of information and insights that we'll take into the future. And
Awesome.
thanks. And we're looking forward to your book.
Yes, thank you so much for having me today.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.